time for us to start 2:30 session here at Friends of the Restoration Lectures. Having too much fun for one person to have. This hour we have Tim Hester, who is from, again, tell the congregation.
What's that?
Name of the congregation?
West Avenue.
West Avenue in Crossville. I have to ask him the name of the church where he preaches. He's been there how many years?
Be 8 years in June.
8 years. Newlywed. Yeah, I guess you can still say you're a newlywed. And we're glad to have him. I've known him all my life because he's a first cousin of mine. I would have had him on the program even if he wasn't a cousin. Nepotism and all, but anyway. We're glad for your presence, and we're looking forward to his lesson. He was going to speak last year on this subject, the life of T.B. Larimore, and his car broke down about halfway down here, so he couldn't come. So this year he was able to come, but Tom Childers was not, and I'm glad that Todd filled in with such short notice, and from what I heard, you did a great job, and we appreciate that. Of course, we knew that Todd does a great job anyway, so we're glad that Tim's with us, and he's going to speak on the life of T.B. Larimore.
Back several years ago, about 6 years ago now, I reckon, I went to preach a sermon at West Avenue that became known as the sermon that nearly wasn't. Because just as I got up to speak, one of our older ladies got up to go to the bathroom and she fell, and we had to call an ambulance, and that interrupted the service. Well, the elders asked us just to close out the service, and we did. Well, the following Sunday, they said, you just go ahead and preach that sermon then. Well, I planned on it, but we wound up having a funeral that put me being late, and I had to get one of the elders to fill in for me, so I didn't get preached that Sunday either. Well, that's about the way we are on this side. Last year, we started down here. My wife was wanting to come with me. We'd only been married a couple of months at the time. She is from down here at Faulkner. Worked over here in the counseling offices, and she was looking forward to come back seeing co-workers. Gets a call that a job she applied for needed her to come back so she can take her buddies work and all. So we turned around and drove back to Crossville. I got my truck, headed down here, got about halfway down, truck broke down. That's when I called David and told him, can't be there. Well, then this year I start preparing, and all the notes I made last year I had on a little flash drive. I found out about a month or so ago, I have no idea where that flash drive is.
Well, we've enjoyed it.
But hopefully we got everything back together, and even down to the point that I spilled egg on my shirt this morning. But it's good to have everybody here. My dad trained me. Everybody asked me, so where do you get your training? I said, I got it from the Guy Hester School of Preaching. And one thing they taught me, it's always good to start off with a joke to kind of loosen everybody up. And so I had one that I was going to tell that just make your hair fall out, but I see several of the men in here have already heard it. So we would skip that. TB, am I not? Need one more? Okay.
Oh, that makes a difference.
T.B. Larimore. If you were to try to describe Brother Larimore, you might use the word son. Because he was a beloved son that loved his mother. You might use the word laborer because from the time that he was just a youth, he was a young man that was not afraid of work at all. You might use the word student because he truly believed in education for himself and for others. You might use the word soldier, and the word soldier is used here in two different senses, in that he was a scout for the Confederate Army, but he is also a soldier of the cross. You might use the word educator, because he influenced so many, in not just Mars Hill, but in other schools also. You might use the word husband, not just to one wife, but to two wives in his lifetime. You might use the word father, because he was the father to 6 children. But I think the word that Brother Larimore would really like to be used is the word evangelist. Because in everything that he did, every effort that he put forth, after he turned 21 years old, it was to evangelize the world. He knew that there was a lost and dying world out there that was in need of the gospel of Jesus Christ, and he felt the pull of that very strongly within his own life. All of these, though, very aptly describe Brother Larimore. Now, I've broken Brother Larimore's life down into 14 different categories. Now, I don't know if we'll cover all 14 categories or not. I asked David how much time I had. He said I only had about an hour and a half.
You can speak for an hour and a half, we'll leave.
But Brother Larimore was born on July the 10th, 1843 in Jefferson County, Tennessee. Now, if you're familiar with the eastern part of Tennessee, Jefferson County is a very beautiful area. Many of you have probably been through Jefferson County and don't even know it, because Jefferson County lies between Knoxville and Sevierville. And so he was born right there between Knoxville and Sevierville, in a very beautiful area. But yet, very little is known about his family, nor his early life at that point. It's very uncertain exactly where they lived in that area. I saw where one writer speculated is around the Strawberry Plains area. If you're around Knoxville News, you hear Strawberry Plains a lot on the Knoxville News. But at one point, apparently, his family was very prominent. They had money and power. When he was born, his mother is the one that picked his name. Theophilus Brown Larimore. The reason why she picked the name Theophilus was because that was just a name that she liked, a name that appealed to her. The reason why that she picked the name Brown is because they had family that were Browns. Matter of fact, 3 members of his descendants, or that he descended from, served as governors of the state of Tennessee. And at least 2 of them were Browns. But then his mother also liked the initials T.B. So she put together Theophilus Brown T.B. Larimore. But although she liked the name, and she's the one that came up with the name, she never called him by that name. She never called him Theophilus. She never called him TB. She always called him my son. Even until the day that she died, she would refer to him as my son. Not much is known about his dad. Matter of fact, I really could not find any information about his dad. Could not even find his dad's name anywhere. But what we could find concerning his dad's family and his dad is they were, as I said, rich and prominent at one time, apparently. But some type of misfortune befell the family. H.C.O. Bowles, in his biographical sketch, A Gospel Preacher, stated concerning Brother Larimore, his early advantages were gloomy and his poverty discouraging. Yet through it all, he rose to heights of great prominence and service among his fellows upon earth. And F.D. Shrigley, and one of Brother Larimore's closest friends, quotes in his book, Larimore and His Boys, a passage that was sent to him as a personal letter by Brother Larimore, in which he says, the very best blood, both maternal and paternal, is blended in my veins. I was born in a humble hovel, right where two royal roads of ruined wealth and shattered fortunes met in the shadow of security debts at midnight of the reign of the intoxicating bow. In other words, my ancestors on both sides were rich, intellectual, influential, successful, and popular. Just as the converging lines came together, some immense security debts had to be paid. There was no shirking. Every dollar was paid, but it took everything. Result, nothing. Absolutely nothing left but poverty and honor. Just then I was born. Just when the shadows were deepest, men hurled from such heights to such depths, turned from these troubles to worse, to strong drink. Then the gloom of the darkest night began to gather around my cradle. I can well remember when the yell of the drunken one coming home otherwise still hours of night would start all of us from the hut to the woods. We would slip like little partridges after a scare, back to the gloomy nest. Debt and drunkenness had depressed me to be dejected all my life. What little we can see about his dad was apparently his dad hit some hard times. And like many in that time, turned to the bottle. As I read these words, my thoughts went to imagining Larimore and his sisters when a drunken dad would come in, scurrying out into the woods to hide until his dad fell asleep and it was safe for him to come back home once again. This is what played an important part in Larimore's life. It played an important part in making Larimore the man that he would be as he grew up. Larimore on his 80th birthday described the place where he was born as rough, rugged, romantic East Tennessee. The homeland of W.G. Brownlow, Horace Maynard, Landon C. Hayes, and Bob Taylor, where brave men till the soil, where faithful, fearless women keep clean homes and care for warmth of happy, healthy children, where the heavens caress the mountains and the mountains kiss the stars. This childhood, from the time of his birth to 9 years old, the things that he suffered in Jefferson County, Tennessee, they helped to frame who Larimore would one day be. After the age of 9, there is no record as to what happened to Larimore's dad. At the age of 9, Larimore's mother packed up him and his sisters in their wagon, and they headed to the Sequatchie Valley. I don't know how many of you have ever visited Sequatchie Valley. To me, that's one of the most beautiful places on earth. If you drive 127 down in the middle of that valley, you look on one side, you see mountains on this side, and look over on this side and see mountains on that side. Now, that's one reason why I'm glad my wife likes to do most of the driving, because I get to watch the mountains as we're going through there. I did that yesterday evening as we came off the mountain there at Pineville and right on through. The Sequatchie Valley was a hard land during that time. She and I, my wife and I were talking as we were driving through there yesterday. I can imagine back in the early 1800s, nothing but pea trails running through those wild woods. And here is a mother with her little children, a woman alone, that's traversing through this valley. We don't know exactly where, but somewhere towards the south end of the valley, they set up their home. My best recollection I could figure out is it had to be somewhere around the base of Signal Mountain, probably. Not far from Chattanooga. We do know that much. We also know it's 40 miles south of Dunlap. So, right around Signal Mountain. And here is a 9-year-old boy that has no father at home to take care of him. He has a mother and his sisters, and he feels the responsibility to take on taking care of the family. So at an early age, Larimore began working the fields around. He began working with the brick makers around. He began working with the wood cutters in the area. A young man that was 9, 10, 11, 12 years old was doing the work of a full-grown adult. But yet the whole time that he was doing this, bringing home money for his family, he was still keeping up with the schooling. He was still making sure that he got all the education that he could. Most of his education came at home. He could not go to school with a lot of the other boys his age. By the time he turned 16 years old, now, all the records I found said 16. I mean to say it's 17 years old, though, because the one book that is edited by Sister Larimore, she says 17. If I mean to go with when there's I think she might would know more than what the other writers would. But by the time he was 16 or 17 years old, he had already advanced to the point that he had gotten all the learning that he could right there. As a matter of fact, he had learned more than any of the other boys his age in that area. And he knew that he needed more learning. with his mother's blessing, he accepted an opportunity to leave his home and enter Mossy Creek Baptist College. Mossy Creek Baptist College was located back in Jefferson County, the area of his birth. Now, that's a pretty long distance from the foot of Signal Mountain or Chattanooga back up through Knoxville and over into Jefferson County. But here is a young man at 16 years old that started out on foot. He traveled for 2 days. As I stated earlier, he loved his mother. He made sure that he cared for his mother. And all these 2 days that he was traveling, his thoughts kept going back to his mother. He kept thinking about her being at home and her and his sisters having to care for themselves and not having a man, quote unquote, around the house to take care of them. So on the night, the second night of his journey, just outside of Dunlap, Tennessee, and it said that he had traveled 40 miles. That's where I got the 40 miles from Dunlap to home. He was ready to turn around and go back home. But as he sat there that night, he realized that his mother would be greatly disappointed in him if he did so. And he did not want to disappoint his mother. So he kept on going. At one point, he stopped to eat on the journey, and it may have been this particular night that he was ready to give up. And he opened up the box of food that his mother had prepared for him. And when he looked down at it, he began to cry because he knew that he had in that box greater than what his mother and sisters were sitting down at their table at home. I said about the period of time in Jefferson County before he was 9 that framed who he was going to be. This keeps framing who he's going to be. The man that he's going to be, the evangelist that he's going to be. He arrives at Mossy Creek College. Mossy Creek College at the time was described as a scientific, literary, and theological institution. It began in 1851 as Mossy Creek Missionary Baptist Seminary. In 1892, it became Carson Newman College and Carson Newman University in 2008. So Mossy Creek College is still in existence even today in that area. The president of Mossy Creek College was a man that Larimore came to admire and look up to. But he was a missionary Baptist preacher. All the faculty that was there were missionary Baptists. The majority of the student body that was there were there to become missionary Baptist preachers. So here is a young man, and up until this point, Larimore had not been associated with any type of religion. And he's being thrown into this college where these missionary Baptists that believe in Calvinism are teaching him. And he would go to their meetings and their revivals, and they would have people that were, quote unquote, getting saved, that were getting religion. And Larimore would hear these preachers talk about this, and he would see the people responding, and he wanted to get religion himself. But yet, no matter how much he sought religion, he found that he could not get religion. He became discouraged. And he considered himself a failure. Having received the Calvinistic teaching of unconditional foreordination and election, he suffered for a long time, believing that he was one of the non-elect. You know, I sat and thought about that. Can you imagine having that drilled into you that you're either chosen or you're not, and then you come to the conclusion, well, I'm not chosen, there's nothing I can do, so I'm going to be eternally lost. That's got to be a hard feeling, especially on a young man. But later he felt that Everest was one of the best things to prepare him. In later life, he comes to realize that this has happened to build him for what he would be one day. Yes, his suffering as a young boy, 4'9" in Jefferson County, the hard work as a young man in Sequatchie Valley, and now as a young student, he realized that all this is building up for something special for him. While Brother Larimore was away at Muncie Creek College, there was an evangelist from North Alabama by the name of Madison Love, who came traveling through Sequatchie Valley preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. While he was in the area, Larimore's mother and at least one of his sisters heard the gospel preached and obeyed it. When T.B. Larimore returned home, and he graduated from college with high honors, and when he returned home, one of the first things that his mother told him when he got home was, "Your sister and I were baptized." The first thing that he asked his mother was, well, how did you get religion? Because here it is, he's still deflated from what he's been being taught all this time that he's away at school. But yet while he's gone to school, his mother and sister are baptized. His mother gave him an answer that I think probably became a motto as his throughout the rest of his life. You don't get religion, you live it. Before he could come to a full understanding himself, the war broke out. Larimore joined the Confederate Army as a scout. And just like with everything else, he excelled. He was a leading scout in the Confederate Army. And I'm not going to go into all his military record. I will say this, that he was at Shiloh. Now the reason why I want to mention Shiloh is because it's very interesting. There were 3 Restoration preachers who were at the Battle of Shiloh. Larimore was a scout for the Confederacy. Of course, I'm sure everybody in here can tell you who one of the generals on the Union side was Garfield. And I would tell you who the 3rd one is, but I cannot remember what his name. I could not find where the who? Okay, that's it. Yeah. I'm glad I've been looking for 2 days now for that name. But you had 3 Restoration preachers that were on the battlefield at Shiloh together. Doubt any of them knew it. At least one of them was not a preacher at the time. Would be before long. After Shiloh, he was transferred to Chattanooga, the Battle of Chickamauga. He was sent to scout out the Sequatchie Valley. I wholeheartedly believe, as much as he loved his mother, that he may have went home for a little while. But while he was scouting the Sequatchie Valley, 2 soldiers captured him. They gave him the choice of taking a non-combatant oath or being sent to a prison of war camp. Well, his thoughts was if he had sat and wasted away in a prison of war camp, he wasn't going to do his mama any good. So he took the non-combatant oath and he went home. And when he got home, he loaded his mother and his sisters up into a wagon and they moved to Hopkinsville, Kentucky. One of the first things that his mother did when they got to Hopkinsville, Kentucky was she associated herself with the local congregation there. She started attending services, and Larimore started attending with her. And on his 21st birthday, he was baptized. Not long after his baptism, he preached his first gospel sermon. Now, to support his family while when they moved to Hopkinsville, because you think about it, when they arrived in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, they only had whatever was on the back of that wagon. They didn't have a home. They didn't have property. So one of the first things that he did was he started supporting the family. He took the team of oxen and an axe, and he started cutting firewood. And he'd take that wagon and load it up, and he'd sell the wood. He started teaching school. And he did other jobs that he could find to do. And so he worked hard in manual labor. He studied hard to preach the gospel whenever the opportunities came. And finally one day, he decided that he needed more education. And that's when he left his family behind and went to Nashville to Franklin College and studied to become a preacher of the gospel. And I think I'm probably going to start moving pretty quickly here, because I'm only on the 7th point, so I'm only halfway through. I think I'm kidding. At Franklin College, he studied under Talbert and A.J. Fanning. Talbert Fanning, as a man, educator, and gospel preacher, was admired greatly by T.B. Larimore. He placed a lasting influence on Larimore throughout his life endeavors. Larimore graduated from Franklin College with honors as a class valedictorian. He entered in 1866. He graduated in 1867, excelling in all of his courses. Class valedictorian. Upon graduation from Franklin College, Larimore associated himself with a man by the name of R.B. Trimble. Larimore and R.B. Trimble would travel across Middle Tennessee, going from town to town, finding any place that they could, an open field, a brush arbor, a schoolhouse, a church building, wherever they could find. When they went into a community, they set up preaching. Brother Trimble did most of the preaching during this time. But as time went on, he would allow Larimore to, if he thought that it's the right opportunity, to get up and preach. Trimble said Larimore that he is the most devoted and self-forgetful young preacher he ever knew. As through Trimble's influence, Larimore decided to go down into North Alabama. Now, North Alabama is probably some of Larimore's most prominent work, most well-known work. I can remember as a young kid when we lived at Red Rock, Alabama, outside of between Tuscumbia and Cherokee, driving by the Mars Hill church building, school, and house, and I always loved that old house that stood there, and it just broke my heart last year when the thing burned down. I sure was hoping that they'd find some way of saving it. But Larimore first went into Lawrence County, Alabama, some of David and I's old stomping grounds. And he started teaching at a place called Mountain Home. Now, the church at Mountain Home was trying to start a school. And so Larimore became a teacher there. A man by the name of J.M. Pickens was the one that was taking the lead and trying to establish the school. He remained at Mountain Home during the school sessions for a couple of years. And during the summer breaks, he'd travel around Franklin and Lauderdale counties, preaching wherever the opportunity came. It's during his time preaching in Franklin and Lauderdale County that he met a young lady by the name of Hester Graham. On August the 30th, 1868, Larimore and Hester Graham were joined in wedlock. And the fall of that year, she returned with him to Mountain Home, Tennessee, to finish out his work with the school there. The following fall, the school failed and did not reopen. For a short while, Larimore went back up into Tennessee, and he taught and he preached some in the area of Tennessee just above North Alabama there. But it wasn't long till he and Esther became desiring to return back to Florence. They go back to Florence, and there Esther has 28 acres that she had inherited from her family. It is that 28 acres that they decide that they're going to build a school. And Hester is very supportive of him. And Larimore, he goes and he borrows the money to build the school. And again, he, as a hard worker, he didn't only just supervise, he used his hands to build that school physically. And there he also built his home that he named Mars Hill. Mars Hill the school opened its doors on the first day of 1871. Due to the generosity of the community and the brethren, the day that they opened the doors, they did not owe a dime on any of the property. The story is told about one man that they owed a bill to, that Larimore had gathered up some money and he went to pay on the account, and the man told him, said, "You don't owe me anything." But Larimore convinced him and said, "If I owe you a debt, while I've got the money, I want to pay it." The man took it only at the agreement that they would not charge interest. Some of the more well-known preachers who attended the school was F.D. Sewell, E.A. Elam, F.D. Srigley, Lee Jackson, and J.C. McQuitty. And due to the fact that Larimore felt his health would fail sooner than that of Hester's, he deeded all the property in Hester's name. Near the property on which reached Mars Hill was an old munitions factory. This factory even dated back before the Civil War, but it shut down at the time. Now, not far from Mars Hill, there was a German village, and they said that the Germans in that village were very likable people. They pretty well kept to themselves. But somebody had gotten word to Larimore that they were getting ready to take that the munitions property, and make a beer craft place out of it. Well, Larimore did not want to make a beer that close to Mars Hill. So he and Hester decided that they would buy. Now, they did not know if this was true or not, what the Germans were planning to do. He had the idea that maybe somebody just wanted to sell him the property and told him that. But he decided they bought 700 acres of land adjoining Mars Hill. They put their faith in the Lord in the decision to procure the land. While at Mars Hill, the Larimores had 7 children born unto them. Mary Delilah, also known as Dee Dee, Granville Lipscomb, Theophilus Brown Jr., known as Toppy, William Herschel, known to the family as Herschel, Julia Esther, Eddie, Andrew Virgil, known by Virgil, and Minnie Bell, who passed away very shortly after birth. The Larimores founded a curriculum upon the Bible. They believed the Bible was the greatest textbook ever written. They gave each student recite at least one lesson from the Bible each day. But after 17 years, Larimore felt the draw to be an evangelist. He did not want to be tied down. He has been getting a lot of demand as a preacher. F.D. Srigley wrote he would say he had no heart to be teaching children English grammar when a perishing world was pleading with him to tell them of Jesus and his love. So at the age of 44, Mars Hill closed its doors to students. So Larimore could hit the evangelistic trail once again. Hester and the 6 living children remained at Mars Hill to care for the family home. I said I'm going to have to cut things a little short now. So I'm going to give you the highlighted version of the rest of it. Larimore would lose 3 of the 6 remaining children before he died, as well as his wife Hester. He was gone just about all the time, except for he would come home every August to hold an extended meeting there at Mars Hill. When he would come home to hold the extended meeting at Mars Hill, in the beginning there was really no place for the churches to meet in that area, the church to meet in that area. And so some brethren decided to build a building that would be appropriate to hold the crowd when Brother Larimore would come home. And the Mars Hill Church building is still standing today. Used, I think it's once a month that they have a singing in it. One other thing I want to point out, because I found this very interesting. You don't find this part in a lot of books. It took me a lot of digging to find this part. And actually, I want to go and do some more in this. But I don't know how many of you are familiar with Dixie University or University of Dixie. In the early 1900s, in 1909, as a matter of fact, a group of brethren at the Broad Street Church of Christ in Cookeville, Tennessee, had the desire to establish a Bible college, something similar to Freed-Hardeman. During this time, in 1908 to 1909, Larimore had been holding a series of gospel meetings in the Cookeville area. The brethren approached Larimore about helping to start the school. Not only did they want him to help to start the school, they wanted him to be the president of the school, and they wanted to name the school the Larimore Lipscomb University. Well, first of all, Brother Lipscomb did not want his name associated with the school. Now, I find that interesting because this was before Lipscomb College took on the name David Lipscomb. And it's documented that Lipscomb did not want his name associated with a school. So they went to drop the name Lipscomb off. It's just going to be Larimore University. But Brother Larimore, the mild person that he was, did not want that either. And he did not want to be tied down as president of the school. He was helpful in helping get the school started, but he did not want to be the president of the school. On September the 4th, 1911, the school opened its doors. Or the school laid the cornerstone in 1912, it opened its doors under President W.B. Boyd. The school lasted until 1914. In 1914, they turned the property that they had bought a good bit of property for the school. They had completed one building that was being used for the school, even though they started out in rented buildings. They bought one building that was finished, others were in the process of being built for the school. They turned all the property over to the city of Cookeville and the county of Putnam. In 1915, Cookeville and Putnam County turned the property over to the state. In 1914, when the city and county took the property, they were making it a high school and college, and it's called Tennessee Polytech University. The state kept that name for a while, but that college is still in existence today, that some of you know as Tennessee Technological University. Ever since that time, there have been members of the Lord's Church that have been prominent within, and my understanding is the man that's president today is a faithful member of the Lord's Church. He's from Starkville, Mississippi. So there's a library at TTU that I want to go back one of these days and dig a little bit deeper into the Dixie University papers and find out more. But my time's up, passed up. I got a lot more that I could cover. But I appreciate your attention. And I want to say this, I've stated all this, and I want to go back to his Civil War service. All the battles that he was in, including Shiloh, he never one time fired his weapon. Never once fired his weapon. From the time that he was a young man of 9 years old, I know some will consider that boy, but with him I consider that a young man. He was a mild-mannered person. That is what shaped his life until his death.